David, great to see you.
Great to see you.
You just returned from Saudi Arabia. What did you see on the ground in terms of Vision 2030 and the opening of the Saudi capital markets, and what does that mean for listed companies and their investor relations teams?
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. I just got back from Saudi about a few days ago. Really interesting trip. Overall, I would say Saudi Arabia's capital markets are entering a new phase of scale and openness and accountability. So I was in Saudi for what's called the PIF Private Sector Forum, which is the annual gathering of all of PIF, which is the sovereign wealth fund in Saudi Arabia's portfolio companies, where they showcase them to investors from all over the world. And it was clear that, global investors are no longer observing the kingdom's transformation from the sidelines. Some of the world's leading investors were there on stage and really talking about bringing the capital that's needed to help drive the transformation of Saudi Arabia. So just for those who aren't really familiar, there's a structural shift that's underway. The Saudi exchange, also called the Tadawul, is the largest equity market in the Middle East. And at the beginning of this month, February of 2026, Saudi Arabia formally opened its capital market to all foreign investors, and they removed what's called the qualified foreign investor framework. So basically enabling direct global participation and lifting the caps of foreign investment. And this is all part of Vision 2030, which is Saudi Arabia's national vision. In which the strategic sectors of the kingdom are built and scaled. And that's often PIF that's kind of orchestrating this process and helping companies transition from private to the public markets through Tadawul to finance their long-term growth. With greater openness to international investment, that brings obviously, deeper liquidity, more governance expectations, and the need for more strategic investor relations. And across Saudi Arabia and more broadly the Gulf region, capital markets are becoming central economic infrastructure, and the global capital is increasingly engaging our region as a long-term investment partner.
100%. If you had a couple of things that you would recommend to listed companies and IR teams to do differently as a result of the meetings that you were in last week, what would those be in 2026?
Yeah, thanks. So obviously, I've been thinking about this, and the opening of the capital markets in Saudi Arabia and more broadly the transformation that's taking place in our region is fundamentally changing the role of IR here. IR teams are no longer communicating primarily with domestic or even regionally familiar investors. They're engaging a fully global performance-driven capital base, right? With different expectations and different time horizons and different standards of governance and transparency. So that's what we're talking to our clients about. It's really a shift in both mindset and in execution. And IR teams must kind of be more proactive, definitely more data-driven and tech-enabled. And more globally networked. They can't just be satisfied with the same group of investors that they've been talking to for years and years. So messaging needs to be sharper. Disclosures need to be kind of more consistent and sharper as well, and engagement is more continuous. And that's part of what we're trying to help with Arrow as well. So I would just say kind of with broader access, naturally there's greater scrutiny, faster capital flows, higher expectations around transparency and accountability. So for listed companies, IR just needs to continue to evolve as a strategic interface between the global capital that they're seeking and the corporate credibility and narrative that they want to deliver to the markets.
100%.
So, Mark, I'd love to also hear, your thoughts on what's happening in our region, really understand how U.S. investors or the people you're talking to see what we're doing out here, and how that applies maybe to the work that you're doing more broadly.
Yeah, thanks, David. That sounds like it was a terrific trip. Just to build on what you'd shared, I think there are probably three or four key drivers that are different over the last 3 or 4 years. The first is I think Western investors typically viewed the broader Middle East and Saudi Arabia as a capital exporter. And as you noted, Saudi Arabia is now very much a vehicle of capital formation and has the market to support that. The second is that the public investment vehicle with I think over $1 trillion in assets now, or a little bit north of that,
Close. Yeah. Yeah.
is is actually driving a combination of the formation of capital and then really being able to allocate that effectively to really drive domestic industries and new industries and broader sectors. I think what's different about the focus there is that many of those investments are longer duration than I would say
Mm.
typical US investors are interested in. And so I think that's going to represent a little bit of a shift in terms of how to think about some of those durationally. The third, I think, as you mentioned, is that as the market now, I think a little over 3 billion, 3 trillion, I apologize, in market cap. Um, there's a liquidity dimension, but as you see from the capital inflows for the market, there was a significantly increase in global interest. And then I think as people are moving out of energies and more into industrials and other domestic growth sectors, you can see the valuation frameworks are evolving. So I think the net of that from a US perspective is that investors are moving from the broader Middle East and Saudi Arabia is transitioning to am I now structurally underallocated in terms of my capital that's in that region that is experiencing really different and I think significant growth characteristics.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really great kind of insights. And yeah, one of the things that I think I can add to that is so there was a soft announcement by PIF of their new strategy. So so PIF has had um, has had a strategy for the last 5 years that has been very successful in helping to kind of diversify the economy, grow kind of some strategic industries, as you mentioned. And I think that's part of kind of the transformation, the economic transformation that's been ongoing in the kingdom. And now in 2026, they're set to launch their new strategy for the coming 5 years towards 2030, right? For Vision 2030, so it lines up with that. And I'm not really, I can't disclose too much about it at this stage. PIF is my client, so I can't go into too much detail, but it's really going to be around refocusing on key sectors and key kind of opportunities that the kingdom has, and again transitioning away from some of the areas that really haven't delivered. And I think that's a natural evolution, a natural process. There's been some negative media around the kingdom pulling back from some of their projects. But when you have big ambitions and I think and you try to do a lot of things. I think it's a natural process to reevaluate that periodically and to refocus where you should be putting your time, energy, and money as whether you're talking about a country or a company or an individual, right? So I think this is a very healthy process, and it's going to be interesting to see how this new strategy is able to help to deliver that over the coming 5 years.
Yeah, 100%. And looking forward to having this be an ongoing conversation as that evolves, but agree with you completely. That's why you have a portfolio, because you've made a number of different bets with different risk return profiles. And to your point, you need to periodically rebalance that portfolio.
Yeah, and it's super impressive. There's 120 companies that were there at the private sector forum, right? That's their portfolio right now, and they're doing everything that you can imagine, right? And it was really cool to see and talk to the Saudis about what they're trying to do, and also talk to the international investors around what's exciting and interesting for them. So yeah.